The next type of factoring we're going to look at is factoring by grouping. We factor by grouping when there are four terms in your expression. So if you look at this one, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. What you're going to do is you're going to first of all look to see if you can greatest common factor. In this one, all four terms had a greatest common factor of 2. So I would take that out front, and you'll notice that the greatest common factor just sits outside for the rest of the process. What we're really going to do is factor this four-term polynomial expression by grouping. So by grouping means that you're going to take this and make it into two groups. So your first group is 5x squared minus 5xy. Your second group is negative 6x plus 6y. And then you greatest common factor each group individually. So out of this first group, I took out a 5x. I'm left with x minus y. Out of the second group, you take the sign of the first term. So I'm going to take out a negative 6. And again, I'm left with x minus y. And then what you're going to notice is that if you did it correctly, you'll be left with two terms that have a greatest common binomial factor. So in this one, I've got that common factor of x minus y. I take it out. I'm left with 5x minus 6. So here's two for us to practice. So again, you're going to break it into groups. I don't do the whole thing that the textbook does. So the textbook does this whole thing where it puts it in brackets. I just underline the two sets of terms. So out of this first group, I'm going to take out a 6. So if I take that 6 and I write it out front, I'm left with p minus q. Out of the second group, I notice that I can take an r, and again, you take the sign of the first term, so I'm going to take a plus r, and I'm left with, again, p minus q, which is my hint that I did it correctly. Then I'm going to greatest common factor out that p minus q, and I'm left with 6 plus r. I highly recommend you pause the video now, give this next one a try, and then come back and see if you did it correctly, or just keep watching. So out of this first one, I can take out a 2k. I would be left with 2k times 3 plus n. I almost forgot. I was like, what am I missing there? So 2 divided by 2 is 1, k divided by k is 1. I'm left with the n. Out of the second group, I'm going to take a negative because I'm taking the sign of the first term. I can take a 2 and I can take an m. So I'm going to greatest common factor out a negative 2m. I would be left with positive 3 plus n. Again, I double check that I get that same binomial bracket. I have a 3 plus n, and my leftover would be 2k minus 2m. Now, whether I did this on purpose or not, I will never admit, but what I want you to always look for is, have you fully factored? You'll notice with this one, I forgot step number 1. I forgot to greatest common factor, which is fine as long as it happens at some point. So I could have done this one and greatest common factored a 2 out first, but I didn't see it, and that's okay. I'll notice now that this bracket still has a greatest common factor of 2, so I'm going to take it and I'm going to write it out front. Now by writing it out front, I'm going to write it all the way out front. When you're multiplying, it doesn't matter the order you're multiplying, so whether I put the 2 here or the 2 here, it's fine, and I would be left with k minus m. Now again, you would get the same answer if you'd greatest common factored out the 2 at the beginning, but I just wanted to show you that it doesn't actually matter if you remember to do it at the beginning or at the end, as long as you do it at some point.